that Jen attended, so I watched it, and it was very interesting. Jen had been to the Middle East with refugees and assisting and being there and so forth. So as we talk now, if your name's out there with the internet, you can find. So it took about 30 seconds to find contact information for Jen. So I explained we're a new Rotary Club and asked if she might be able to be a speaker. And in doing so, she also said, my daughter just came back, was an exchange student, Rotary last year. I forget, where did she go?
Italy.
She went to Italy, and those of you who don't know, that Israel and Jen's daughter, they live up in the Belfast area, so that's a different district, and she went through that Rotary district up there. But those of you that don't know, Israel is the district contact liaison person for the exchange program. So anyone who goes through it will have contact with Israel. And he really wanted to be here, wanted to hear it. That's why tonight we're filming that. And we're hoping that maybe we can possibly even get it onto a local access TV with a little introduction talking about the club. So that's neither here nor there. So with that, I watched it. I found it very, very interesting. Jen said she'd love to. We worked on some dates and so forth, and here she is. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you for having me. I do have to say it was so beautiful driving down this road the first day that it's over 70 degrees. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go sit now and give a talk with everyone who's going to be antsy to get outside on this nice summer day. So thanks for being here. So I work for the University of New England. I'm going to ask you, you're going to have fun.
Can I go sit over here?
Right. Sure.
We'll give you the whole thing. How's that? Thank you, because I can see it better.
So my name is Jen, and I work for the University of New England. I'm a faculty member there. I'm actually trained as an infectious disease epidemiologist. If anyone knows what that is, including my mother still doesn't know what that is, I don't look at moles and diagnose. That's a dermatologist. I'm an epidemiologist, and so I study diseases. I went to Providence College in Rhode Island, Emory University for my graduate, and I was in the Peace Corps. I've done some international work around HIV in Haiti, Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, and I now do some work for the University of New England in Ghana. So I like to consider myself kind of somewhat knowledgeable and like to keep up to date on world happenings, but I have to be honest with you, for the longest time, I was completely ignorant to what was going on. I knew there was some bad stuff going on in the Middle East because there's always bad stuff going on in the Middle East, and there were a bunch of people trying to escape it, but there's always people trying to escape bad stuff. And then I started thinking about it, like, you know what, as an educator and someone in public health, I should probably learn a little bit more about what's going on so I can talk to my students about it, I can talk with my kids about it. So like most people do, I started tinkering around on the internet. Like, oh, that's interesting, and that's interesting. Well, I came across this video, and I'm going to show you a little excerpt of it. And this is from an organization called Samaritan's Purse. It's a beautiful island, by the way.
The majority of refugees that arrive in Greece or arrive in Europe arrive here on this island. So these beaches are where, sometimes 60 to 70 boats will land here per day. Most of them have fled countries of conflict. They left all their belongings. Some of them have left even family members behind. They just flee for their own safety, and they flee for the hope of a better life. I can't even imagine leaving everything I know and coming to a place on a little raft. You have no idea whether you're going to be welcome, or you're going to be thrown in prison, or you're going to be, you just have no idea what to expect.
A lot of the moms are very visibly afraid. And to be handed someone else's child that's really humbling to be responsible to care for them even for that brief moment.
It was that image right there. Sorry, I sort of choked up when I see it. It was that image right there that got me to Greece. It was this image because I remember being 10 years old and never thinking that I was going to have to pick up and flee for my life with my family. But even more striking about this image was what she has on her arms. Does anyone recognize them?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're floating.
They're floating.
Jeez, yeah, that's gonna help.
Right? I wore those when my dad taught me how to swim. I used them to teach my kids how to swim. Never once did I ever think that those should have been used as a flotation saving device for a child crossing the Aegean Sea. It was at that moment I thought, I had to do something. I had to do something.
Now, is this island near Mykonos or?
Yeah, yes, it
Or-
is. So I'll show you. So this is what's I'm going to have to use a past tense because a lot has changed over the past 2 weeks. So typically what was happening, people were leaving Syria, also Iraq and Afghanistan. They were traveling to Turkey, and then from Turkey, many times what they were actually doing was getting on a boat and landing on a number of those islands. There was Lesbos, there was Chios, there was Lesbos. There's a number of islands. Basically what would happen is the boat that the smugglers would just kind of like send them out, like in what you saw. A motor would take them so far. Sometimes the motors would die, and then they would just float. Sometimes they wouldn't make it. It would take on water, and it would go down. Their hope was, after Greece, to travel across the border to Macedonia, go into Serbia. This was all on foot or bus. When they hit Hungary, Hungary actually offered free train transportation to refugees. Everyone thought that was amazing, and then we realized, why would Hungary be offering them free train transportation? Get them through
Yeah.
without stopping.
Yeah.
And then hopefully Austria, and then ultimately though Germany, because that was, it was supposed to be an open country for people to be able to go to. So what does sort of the numbers look like? So when we look at numbers of refugees of sort of our generation, we can see that, where's Syria? Oh, Syria, 4.0 million refugees just in 4 years. Just to give you a little bit in context, how many people live in Maine? Do you know?
1.2.
1.2 million. So almost 4 times, and this is the end of 2015, so definitely many more. So probably about 4 of the amount of people who live in Maine, multiply that 4 times, is the number of refugees that have left Syria to head to a safer place. So one day, a woman named Crystal in California saw an image very similar to this. Is that a phone? That's impressive. It's a duck quack, and I usually get a few laughs. A woman in California saw an image very similar to this and thought, oh my gosh, these refugees are on these journeys and they're carrying their children over hundreds and hundreds of miles. And this isn't safe. It doesn't allow for them to be able to carry other stuff with them. What if they had baby carriers? So that led to really an international movement of collecting baby carriers by an organization, this woman Crystal started, named Carry the Future. So in stumbling along this video, literally 15 minutes later, I'm learning about Carry the Future, an organization that just started in September by this woman who said, I'm going to try and raise $2,500, buy some baby carriers, and go to Greece. Let's see what happens. So we are now about 6,000 baby carriers distributed later. But during this time, the way that I start to get involved is donations of baby carriers. So very much like your Toys for Tots, the other donations that we did, we basically just put a call out to the community saying, new or slightly used baby carriers, would you donate them? So I did it for the state of Maine with a number of volunteers. We probably collected about 500 baby carriers at the time. Midcoast Hospital was a donation site for us, other businesses were. Before I left on my trip, I had a bunch of students from both the College of Medicine and undergraduate coming together to pack up the baby carriers. We packed them with winter hats and mittens and socks and pacifiers and granola bars, and we put little sayings on them like, stay strong, be safe, best wishes on your travels. And so then so that's how I originally got started. I was like, I can collect a few baby carriers. That's something that I can do. And then as I started to get more involved, I'm like, wait a minute. What if I went to distribute the baby carriers? So that led me to Greece in February. This is the team of women that I was with in my time in Greece. And we were there with Carry the Future. And our main mission was baby carrier distribution. That's what we were there for. And what we did is we would go down to the port of Athens whenever a ferry boat came in. So every day, multiple times a day, from the wee hours of the morning to very late at night, a ferry boat would pull up to the port of Athens. This ferry boat would travel to all the islands and pick up refugees. Now they paid for this. So, and many of the refugees were lawyers, doctors, teachers, professionals. There were also people from very poor. When we were there, the seas were rough and cold, which meant the smugglers charged less, which meant poorer people could access. So we were seeing from people who lived in the poorest neighborhoods of Syria to the elite, to people who were, mothers and fathers were both physicians working, as surgeons in a hospital. So this ferry would go around and collect refugees at the islands. And then it was a commercial ferry. So literally on this ferry, you had refugees and tourists and business people, and they all would come to the port in Athens. And then they'd open up the doors and everyone would just come marching out. And we were there to start identifying all the people who were walking out carrying their babies. We'd literally pull them aside and say, look what we've got for you. What was slightly complicating the matter is, so we called them mugglers. So they weren't quite smugglers, they were mugglers. Waiting at the port, along with us, with Carry the Future, along with all these really small, really just community-based organizations from Sweden and Norway and France, giving out food and water and toiletries and baby formula, also waiting at the port, demanding their attention, were the mugglers, which are the people who had buses, like Concord Trailways, like Greyhound, waiting up the road, literally vying for their money, like trying to get top dollar to drive them to the border of Macedonia, where they would just get dropped. So literally, people are running all over the place, trying to get on the buses, because if you didn't get on the buses, you were left behind, and you didn't know where you were going to end up. And you wanted to get there soon, because you wanted to get a good price before the mugglers started realizing they could get probably top dollar from somebody else. So there was this battle that was happening at the port. So we would be pulling people aside and fitting them with baby carriers. So these are a couple of the families that we fitted with baby carriers. There were families, many of the times the dads wanted to be fitted with the baby carriers because they knew that they were a little bit stronger physically. But many times moms were traveling on their own. You can't see this baby because it's so small. It was a newborn, which meant that this mother gave birth right before she left or on the way. What that means to me as a mom of 3 kids is excuse my French, but holy shit, that must be some serious stuff they're leaving. There's no way would I be leaving in those conditions. But we found ourselves doing so much more than delivering and fitting baby carriers. At one time, one of my team members and I were fitting a family a baby carrier. And all of a sudden the husband's yelling, come, 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 to his wife, and they had 3 kids. The mugglers were trying to get them up on the bus, but they had to go probably about a half a mile. And literally they're carrying everything they have left in their life in their arms, including their children. So literally, the mother hands me her probably 3-month-old baby, hands my team member the 3-year-old baby, and grabs the arm of the infant, the probably preschooler, while her husband runs ahead to go get sure seats on the ticket. Literally, I was handed someone's newborn that I had never met before, didn't speak the language. We ran up to the buses with them. And I'll never forget, at one point, I turned to look over my shoulder, and the wife was coming, and she was so tired. She was so tired. And she yelled ahead, and she goes, Yasef, her husband's name. And her husband turned around, she said, come, come. She was so tired. She just looked at him, took a breath, and continued on. Because that's the only choice that they had. So now I come back, I've had these amazing experiences, and now I think, now what? Now what do I do? Now what am I supposed to do? I have these experiences, I have these stories that people shared with me. What am I supposed to do now? So I feel like my job is to correct the distorted and misinformation, to advocate for safe passage, to promote a welcoming resettlement, and to be part of the solution and not the problem. The misinformation. One of the things that we keep on hearing over and over again is that refugees are young men who should be staying back and fighting in Syria. And if you look at the data, people are right. A large proportion of the refugees are young men. But then you've got to ask yourself, why? Why are they leaving? First of all, they're leaving with their families. Second of all, a lot of them are leaving with their children. But one of the major reasons why is, does anyone know who's fighting in Syria right now? Who the groups are? It's ISIS. It's the government regime, the Assad regime, and it's the anti-Assad regime. There's actually 3 groups fighting. It's not one side or the other. So it's very typical to happen in Syria. Somebody knocks on the door, and they're wearing army fatigues. You open up the door, they say, give us your young men. Young men come, and they say, come fight with us. They don't identify who they are. It could be ISIS, it could be Assad, it could be anti-Assad. And they're like, no, we're not coming with you. Tell us who you are. And they're sheltered. That's why they're leaving. We saw a number of men there who were there to keep their families safe. The other thing that's important is to advocate for safe passage. Putting a mother who just gave birth to a baby on a whitewater raft with 60 other people is not safe passage. The first day we were there, we met this man. And we met his 5 boys. That one being his youngest. He was actually from Iraq. And we noticed that the infant was stinky and hungry. I'm like, where's the mom? Mom didn't make it. Mom drowned at sea. 5 boys.
That we never have to worry about.
Including that youngest one right there. This is not safe passage. It's not. One of the boys, I remember him very clearly, he was running around with the shoe untied. And I remember tying his shoe and thinking, did I just come all the way to Greece to tie a little boy's shoe? And I thought, you know what, at that moment, that's the most maternal touch he had had in the longest time. And who knows if he's going to ever have it again. This is not safe passage. Those 3 girls are from actually Afghanistan. They traveled from Afghanistan to Syria to Turkey and then came over. I remember them clearly welcome them off the boat, and they didn't have any kids, obviously, but they were so happy. They were so happy. They were free. They were so happy, and they were going to go and they were going to find out what their next move was. We met them 24 hours later in this park in the center of Athens. It was a park where people went who had no more money to continue their journey. They basically trying to figure out what to do. Those 3 girls had no more money. This park was filled with men and families. They were incredibly vulnerable. 3 teenage girls traveling on their own. That's not safe passage. I actually remember one of the girls talking to her, and she had a retainer in her mouth, like, you know, an orthodontic retainer. And I thought, she's, and of course my mom mind, I'm like, when's your next orthodontist appointment? And then, and I kind of giggled in the back of my mind, how many times, like, if any of your kids lost their retainer, I'm like, she's traveled all the way from Afghanistan. So I would tell my kids when they get a retainer, I know a girl who travels all the way from Afghanistan, and she did lose her retainer. They were so innocent. The wonderful news is that when I came back, we had received a voicemail message from this family that they needed to Greece, and they were there. Those 3 girls, we happened to go back to the port, and we found the organization Save the Children. I said, hey, have you seen any children because one of the big issues is unaccompanied minors, children who come over whose parents or don't have adults. I said, you know what? There's 3 girls. This is what they look like. Can you go find them? We received, through the wonderful power of the internet, we received word that they had gotten to Greece. They left the morning that they closed the Macedonia border to Afghani refugees. Like, there was a higher power looking out for them. But again, this is not safe passage for our most vulnerable people of the world. And then resettlement. So, I was there in February. Today, in Greece, it's different. The EU has made a deal with Turkey. It was kind of an interesting deal. The deal is that the Turkey will get $3 billion to keep refugees in Turkey. One of the ideas around refugee resettlement is that you keep them in countries closest to their country, so when things get better, they can go back. Because you talk to everyone, there's 2 things that they'll say. I want to go back home. I want to go back home. The other thing that you'll hear from every kid that you ask, I just want to go to school. I just want to go to school. So what's happened in Greece is because of this deal, all the borders are closed to everybody. So any refugee that was in Greece when the borders closed are stuck in Greece. And they have very little options. They can file to resettle in Greece. They can file for refugee asylee status, and then in so many years get resettled in another country. In our country, we do have a resettlement program that takes about 2 years for refugees to get here. As we have learned from this presidential debate, that they've said correct and incorrect things about. But the bottom line is that the United States has said that they will take in a number of refugees to be resettled in different areas, but there are a number of politicians who are trying to block that from happening for various different reasons. So right now, the port, you can see the ferry right there, the port that I was working in is filled with tents. It's filled with people living on the streets. There's no shower facilities. There's no regular food. Or they're on the border with Macedonia, literally waiting to see if they're going to open the border. Hundreds of people have not given up the hope that they're going to open the border. That's all they're living on right now, is hope. And then a number of refugees are being resettled in other camps. And then many of the camps, and we actually went to one, are old Olympic Stadium buildings, which, believe it or not, are completely absent in Greece. And so the last part is about being the solution. And when I was there, and when I come back, I keep on thinking about the book, The Lorax, by Dr. Seuss, that we probably read to our kids. The idea that unless someone like you hears a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. And before I left, even my own family was saying, what the hell are you doing, Jen? You know, Peace Corps Africa was one thing, but you're a grown woman with kids. Why the hell are you going to Greece? And I couldn't really describe it, except to say, I just feel like it's something that I need to do. And the opposition that I had, what do you do? Literally, there was an article in the paper about me going, and I was collecting baby carriers. It was in the Bangor Daily News. I got 3 comments on it. There was 3 comments that were left after the article. One of them included, all those refugees are men. What are they going to need baby carriers for, to carry their bombs? So, I mean, before I left, there was a lot of opposition. But when you got there, no one ever said to me, what the hell are you doing here? And the people of Greece are amazing. That square that I showed you where the 3 girls were, those 3 girls survived that square because Greek residents took them into their homes, had them shower, had them nap, fed them, just totally opened their doors and said, come, we want to keep you safe. So oftentimes I think, you know, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? Maybe I should be helping here at home. Maybe I should be going. The bottom line is I went. It was amazing for so many different reasons. We all need to find our place, whether with refugees or not. And I honestly feel like just in the first 20 minutes of being a part of this meeting, we should leave the refugee crisis to Rotarians to figure out, because I think we could probably figure out in a meeting at a charter party. But so I just wanted to say from the work that Rotarians do, it is pretty amazing. And to whether it's about refugees, one of the things that is going to be a result of this, and we've seen this with hepatitis A, is there's going to be outbreaks of vaccine-preventable diseases, including polio, which just reminds me of the work of the Rotarians and the work that you do around polio cannot stop, because it's situations like this that are going to create outbreaks. So I really appreciate the time that you gave me today to listen and to learn. And so thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or? Yes.
What happens when they get to Germany?
So once they get to Germany, there are resettlement programs there. They're actually still trying to work out those bugs right now. There's camps, and that's all I can say right now is that they're trying to figure it out. Yeah.
And how long have those borders closed?
Forever right now. There's no sign of them opening back up again.
Who's giving Turkey the billions of dollars?
EU. So the
The
deal
EU?
is, the EU is giving, is it the EU or the UN? You know what, don't quote me on this right now. It's either the EU or the UN is giving them $3 billion to keep refugees there. And they're also giving Turkey, like when you're in the European Union, you don't need a visa to go to all the other countries. They're actually now allowing that for Turkey.
Turkey's not part of it.
So Turkey's not part of it right now, but now because of this deal, they're allowing people from Turkey. But I don't know if you've checked, Turkey's not really a safe place. So they've literally put their, what is it, from the flame to the, what's that saying?
Frying pan.
From frying pan into the fire or something like that. Like they're literally gone from one unsafe place to a little bit of a less unsafe place.
But they're still coming.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm linked with some communications, and the number of refugees that have come onto the islands has dramatically decreased. So a couple things happened. That's dramatically decreased because now the sea is being patrolled by the military. Before they were being patrolled by nonprofit organizations like Doctors Without Borders. The Italian Coast Guard was out there. The other thing that happened is the response to refugees was a very grassroots response. It was literally like lifeguards from different countries hanging out at the beach saving people. It was Carry the Future. It was Soup Port, this small organization out of Sweden that was making soups that Syrians and Middle East are very used to eating, because before the military was just giving them spaghetti, and they actually couldn't even, they were starting to have GI problems because they weren't really used to eating spaghetti. So it used to be a very grassroots response. Now, because the military's put in, a lot of the organizations have been pushed out, and the military said, we're taking care of this. And actually refugees are being put in camps, and there's questions around human rights violations because refugees are supposed to be able to have freedom of movement, but when they're put in camps and not allowed to leave, there's a question on if that's being allowed.
Do you have any plans to go back?
Yes, yeah. So I'm still very actively involved with Carry the Future. I'm their strategic officer. So I work with a team of people to figure out what our next move is going to be. Things happened really fast. I'll probably go back in the fall.
Good. You see things like this, and sometimes we think that, gee, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, this type of situation happening. Possibly. I was teasing with Nate, who has a 7-month-old, 8-month-old set of twins.
Oh my gosh!
I said, Yeah, it's
We were-
double the price.
Yeah, and we were literally fitting forward, like we were putting ergos. Do you have an ergo carrier or like something, whatever it's called? Yeah, touched it, right? We were literally fitting parents with both,
Front and back.
front and back. And then we were fitting, moms who were pregnant, were fitting, trying to fit just right. But, it was interesting, on my way back, I had to fly through Switzerland on my back way from Greece, and my flight back to Boston got delayed by like 6 hours. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm complaining about this. There's no way I'm complaining about the delayed flight.
These type things, at least it changed my perspective on a lot of things. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
having
you,
me,
Jen.
and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you for what
Thank
you've
you
done.
too. So,